Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Welcome to this week in tennis. It's been a lot about the Miami Open. Of course, congrats to Jannik Sinner, the winner on the men's sides, and maybe even bigger congrats to Danielle Collins, who's playing her last year on tour, for winning the women's title. A very impressive performance by her, beating Rybakina in the final. I actually have Danielle Collins' racket specs. She did make a switch from the Baulat Pure Aero, and before she used the head radical as well, before the Aero, to the Technifiber T-Fight 300, kind of an underlooked model in the Technifiber lineup, similar to the IGA Signature, but now they kind of discontinued that one, it seems like. Very good racket. She uses it slightly extended with pretty chunky specs for a WTA Tour player, and you have them here on the screen. Around 330 swing weight, which is something I'd be very happy to use myself. So big congrats to her. She's not gonna keep playing tennis despite this impressive success. Sorry about the rattling here. Due to health issues, she is retiring still, so it was nice to see her top her career off with such a nice win at the Miami Open. So well deserved to Danielle, and I hope she has some great success in this last season of her professional tennis career. So that was on the women's side. We also say congrats to Rohan Bopanna and Matthew Ebden, who won their Masters title. And Bopanna is 44 years old, so it's good for us slightly older guys that we see this, that you can play this type of high-level doubles professional tennis at his age. So really cool. Seem like really nice guys, these two. So probably the best doubles team in the world right now. So big congrats to them. Now, before we go on to talk about Jannik Sinner. Sinner is the winner of the Miami Open. Will he keep dominating this season? That is really the big question, because if you look at the scores of this event, he was pretty dominant in all of his matches. I'm a fan of Dimitrov. I've said that in many other videos. He came in beating Alcaraz in straight sets. Alcaraz said he made me look and feel like a 13-year-old boy or something. So Dimitrov was in great shape. Did have to fight a bit harder against Zverev. He looked a little bit spent, a bit tired. Sinner has that impressive ball striking. He's like Djokovic with more power, moving always in balance. It's the slalom skiing or whatever that made him have such great balance on every shot. And he was just pummeling the Dimitrov backhand. And when you have a one-handed backhand, that is the strategy you're going to get a lot of the time. And I think on these kind of hard courts where you have a more of a metronomic game, you're going to have long rallies. You don't have so much time depending on the speed of the court. Pummeling that backhand is a successful strategy. You need a bit more time on the one-hander to wind up and hit it. While with a two-hander, of course, you can take it earlier, be more reactive. And Sinner had the strategy pretty clear. Dimitrov looked a little bit tired after all his tennis, and he couldn't really fight off Sinner. Did start really well, Dimitrov, like 2 games to love on his serve. But then, tennis is one of those sports where just a little bit of a blip in the concentration can change the whole course of a match, pretty much. And then he lost that set and got broken early in the second, and it was over. Similar to what happened in the semi-final between Sinner and Medvedev, where I thought it would be a tough match. My buddy Stefan, who writes for Tennis Nerd, does predictions and has done a lot of good predictions for this tournament. He was, having like 6 out of 7 match predictions with some good odds and stuff correct. And then he ran into this Sinner Medvedev, which we both thought would be a hard fought affair. But yeah, Sinner was just too good. Medvedev got a bit dejected that his more aggressive strategy that he used in the Australian Open final didn't work. And then he didn't really, have maybe the energy or the mindset to go for plan B, and he would just look frustrated. So Sinner seems to take the game out of the opponent's hands a bit, similar to what Djokovic does, and similar to what other kind of GOAT players do. Still, we shouldn't hype him up. He only has 1 slam, so far, but he can be a dominant force in this season and in the future. The question now with tennis is, of course, you go to the clay, things change. And that's the beauty of the sport as well. It's like you're getting into a groove on one surface in one type of condition, and suddenly you have to move to another place, to another condition, to another court, another surface. and that's where you have to really find your game again, and you have a new challenge on your hands. And we'll see how Sinner does on clay. Should be his least favorite surface, but the way he's playing, only lost one match in the whole year. I'm fascinated to see what he can bring. So this would be a great clay court season to look forward to. I always tend to look forward to the clay. I will be also in Rome watching some live tennis there. I'm sure there will be Sinner frenzy. So really look forward to that. I love the Rome ATP Masters 1000. I've been there a few times. Great event. So will be fun to be in Rome and watch some great tennis. And now that Italian tennis is, you know, at their peak of all time, like there's so many strong Italian players. They're just mopping up challengers left, right, and center. Luca Nardi, I think this week won one. Maybe there were two guys from Italy. Also a Portuguese player who did really well. I need to check the name though. So the name of the Portuguese player is Henrique Rocha, who won in Murcia, the challenger there. So there's so many up-and-coming players now coming and mopping up titles and being a threat from all over the world, except in Sweden. It seems to be being Swedish. Swedish tennis is not doing so well, but I hope it changes. We're always hopeful for that. But overall, tennis is in a great space, I would say. Breakpoint being cancelled or not, I think tennis is doing really well, and you're seeing that when they release tickets to like the French Open, and it's like sold out, and the interest is huge for tennis right now, thanks a lot to guys like Sinner and Alcaraz. And yeah, this is great news for the sport, obviously. There was some other pro player racket info that I did mention. Daniel Collins' racket. There's also some specs published on Yoshihito Nishioka. Fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Do you need to use a heavy racket to play professional tennis? No, you don't. Just ask Yoshihito Nishioka, a player who's been ranked as high as 21. He's still top 100 with around 70. Today, he plays with a Yonex V-Core 98, and it's not the lightest racket on tour, but if you look at the swing weight and the specs, it's definitely something you can use also on a recreational level. So he has it at 337 grams strung, 31 centimeter balance, so very headlight, most of the weight in the handle, and a 320 strung swing weight. I point out strung there because there are many pros that still like a heftier swing weight, 350, 360, mainly older guys like Djokovic, Murray, but the younger generation, they're going slightly lower overall in swing weights. This is a personal taste, of course, so whatever floats your boat, but for Yoshihito, this works really well. He strings his racket with natural gut Babolat VS Touch 130 gauge at 51 pounds and Yonex Polytour Pro in the crosses at 48 pounds. That's 125 gauge. Thanks to Bruno, who got Yoshi's racket and could send me the information. Always fascinating to see what the pros use. We made a video, me and Daniel, about how you can take old school racket specs like headlight heavy rackets and you put them on a modern racket and it actually still works. We play with some outrageous racket specs in that video, and that video is on the channel for YouTube members or my Patreon page, patreon.com/tennisnerd. Might publish it here as well if the interest is strong enough. But I really appreciate all of you members and patrons who support the channel. So in that video, we talk about heavy rackets. Some pros use very heavy specs, usually the older guys, Murray, Djokovic, and Rafa in this case as well. But then you have a lot of players using lighter specs these days. You have Nishioka, for example, using specs that could be something for a club player even. We've seen other racket specs with low swing weights. Dan Evans is one of the examples. Taylor Fritz, they use not always light rackets. In Evans' case, it's very heavy, 360 grams, but ultra head light. And in Fritz's case, it's lighter. So you don't need to play with like a beast style spec. You can play with lighter rackets also on the Pro Tour and do well. So it's all about personal taste, your swing style, how you play, and so on. That's really the thing I want to get through. You have to find your spec. You can't really copy, you can experiment, you find your spec, you buy a few rackets of the same so you can match them and just switch between them, and then you hopefully don't need to change rackets ever. Or you can be like me and you change rackets all the time. I'm trying to change that, but we'll see how that goes. Great week in Miami. There were some complaints about the tournament overall from the players, but that's maybe nothing super serious. You saw that in last week's episode with Casper Ruud maybe. And we had some pro player spec reveals. We can also talk about Grigor Dimitrov. Why is he having such a resurgence? Tough to say. I think he's found some kind of peace. I don't know where that's from, but if you listen to the comments and from the interviews from his coach Valverde, he talks about that he's like found peace where he is in tennis and just focusing on playing, and he's playing like great tennis the last 6 months. So I'm a Dimitrov fan. I like his style, very graceful. So it's fun to see him do well. He's also a nice guy by the sounds of it. I haven't met him, but everybody seems to call him Mr. Nice. He's been on and off playing with a pro staff 97, the RF 97 layup pretty stiff. And he's been using his kind of like, I would say almost signature string pattern, like 18-18, 18-17. And that's been his spec. And then you've seen different swing weights, like 350 swing weight with a pretty heavy static weight, or 340, 142. So I think he's been a guy over the years who's been experimenting a lot, but this racket setup and string setup, got 4G, I think it is, seems to be doing him well. So hopefully no more switching from Dimitrov. He can just focus on keeping playing like this. He might not be enough to win the Masters title, but he's there, he's competing, he reaches finals. That's very impressive, and I like to see him do well. So what's happening now? Where we have clay court season coming up. Like I said, very exciting times. Everything changes. Players need to regroup, recalibrate. Some love it, some hate it. Medvedev is one of those guys that usually talk about how much he hates clay, but then he can play really well on it, and win titles. So, we'll see how this season turns out. I think there's some great entertainment and great storylines to come. Alcaraz versus Sinner. Djokovic, can he come back to good form? No, Ivanisevic, can he defend his French Open title from last year? That's also a big question now when we have Sinner and Alcaraz in great shape. I think that's it for this week in tennis. It's all Miami Open. I hope you're well. I hope you're playing some tennis. Check out tennisnerd.net if you need help finding a racket. There's consultations, there's lots of information, gear reviews, predictions and stuff like that as well. And if you want like a nice discount, you check out our deals page. It's always updated with the latest deals and discounts, like 10% off Tennis Warehouse Europe and so on. That's it. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.